Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for the fifth talk in the Moral Ambition for AI series, where we spotlight leading builders and thinkers shaping AI for humanity's benefit. As you all know, AI systems pose existential threat and are already causing real-world harms. I'm convinced that adequate AI governance can help us reduce these risks, but we need more people building expertise in this area, as well as working on AI policy. That said, career transition to AI governance can be very challenging. We're very fortunate that today's speaker can help us navigate this path. Carolin Basilowski, who is a network strategy lead at Talos Network, is uniquely qualified to offer us guidance on assessing our fit for AI governance work, exploring possible career paths, as well as investigating entry routes for newcomers. I participated in one of Carolin's workshops in Berlin, and I found it very useful. So I'm very excited that more of you can benefit from their insights tonight. Carolin, thank you so much for agreeing to share your advice with us and for sharing your expertise. Very excited to have you here. And yes, without further delay, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Carolina. Welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this talk on a Sunday evening. Nice to see many of you here. As I already was introduced by Carolina, thanks for that. Some of you might have heard about Talos before. If not, just a quick intro. So Talos Network runs the Talos Fellowship. This is our flagship program, which helps people find their entry point into European AI governance. And I will mention something at the very end of this talk, but just to let you know, applications are open. You might want to check out our website if you end up liking this talk. With that, I'm going to give you a quick overview of today's session. We will cover three different things. So the why, the how, and the what to focus on. So the case for governance, why is it even important? So the overall idea around policy as a field in general. But then also the map of AI governance. So where are the different entry rounds? What are the different opportunities to work on this topic? And then as the last point, choosing your focus, we will have a little worksheet that I prepared where we'll ask you to spend 10 to 15 minutes on this to really reflect on that. Perfect. With that, we will jump into the first part. Why governance? With that, I would like us to imagine a scenario. So imagine you run into Ursula von der Leyen at an event in Brussels, and she asks you, who should I call and what exactly should I ask them to do to strengthen Europe to AI governance? So what would you tell her? Because she's the most powerful woman in the EU. She might make something happen, right? She's the president of the European Commission since 2019. And now she's asking for your input. What would you answer her? One person wrote EU AI Office. Well, what about that? Pause AI. Okay, that's also one idea. Feel free to comment to add more comments in the chat if you have any idea what you would like to tell her. Just pause all AI development in Europe. Well, it's probably quite hard to come up with something on the spot, right? Because it's a very we have you created the UI Office to regulate AI. Yes, that's correct. We should potentially increase spending in safety, but what exactly does it mean, right? So you have a politician in front of you, and she might ask you, what exactly does it mean? What exactly should I do? So let's assume that you say, let me think about this. It's a difficult problem. Let me research this and send you a report in a month, right? This might be about pause AI. This might be about export controls. This might be about strengthening the Brussels effect or standards or whatever. So you send it to her and you wait patiently. And 2 months later, I need to remember clicking the slides. How do I do that again? Yes. Sorry, it just took me a while. Thanks. So sadly, 2 months later, nothing happened. She didn't reply to your report or to your follow-up emails, and you also can't really see a change in new AI governance. So the question is, why did nothing happen? Now, one of the main things that I would like for you to take away from this talk is that policymakers face a lot of constraints, because when working in policy, a few points are really important to understand. So policymakers are extremely busy. So, and this is one point. Another point is that they have a very limited attention span, because every day think tanks produce mountains of reports that they want policymakers to read, of course. But when are they supposed to find time for that? So I got to know people working in the commission who work extremely hard. They have the whole days filled with meetings, and then they also receive 100 emails each day. And at the same time, they only get around to the email inbox at 8 p.m. in the evening. So what should they do about another report that was sent to them? The second part, another point, is that AI is a very niche topic in most policy circles. And that means that most policymakers have very little context. And with that in mind, it's good to know that most commissioners, or many commissioners, have not very much technical knowledge. They're usually lawyers, economists, political scientists. So your report might actually not be accessible to a non-technical audience. So how do you make sure that they understand what you want to tell them? To add to that, there's oftentimes limited political will. So even if your idea is good, maybe it's not the right time to propose it. It adds to any other geopolitical constraints. So let's assume that next week, Trump is announcing the new tariffs for the EU. So in that very moment, the Commission very likely doesn't want to push on strict AI rules that would affect the US, because they're scared that Trump would punish them potentially with higher tariffs. As a last point, your research might build on incorrect assumptions. So let's assume you propose that two DGs, so Director Generals, so two departments in the Commission, they should collaborate on a topic, let's say on AI standards. But maybe there's an internal dynamic that you are not aware of within the Commission that's blocking decisions on standards for AI right now, because those two departments are fighting about who is allowed to work on a particular topic. So being aware of all this helps you to actually work on, write proposals that actually can have an impact. Okay, so to add to that, just as another example to illustrate my point, there are World Bank reports. So as a background, I studied economics, and when I was in university, one of the options I was thinking about was, oh yeah, if I work for the World Bank, people are going to read my reports, and they will surely make a difference. They will surely reach the right important decision makers. Well, unfortunately, that's not always the case, because the answer to this question, which World Bank reports are widely read, is very few, sadly. So to give the exact answer, it is, a very low number for most of them. Some are actually downloaded. Who knows how many of them are actually read, right? We all know these papers that we download but never read. The number that this report is saying is that 87% of all World Bank reports are never cited. And if you're in academia, you know that if a paper is not cited, it might as well not exist. That being said, of course, some reports are incredibly influential, at least according to the number of downloads. So where does this leave us? If you, there you go. Given all these constraints, how can you still have an impact? This brings us to a concept that is coined by Mintram, the policy entrepreneur. So the policy entrepreneur is someone who identifies a fixable gap in how government and other actors behave and gets something to happen. So there are some skills that are outlined with that: ambition, perseverance, strategic thinking, knowing how to build coalitions, but also knowing how to communicate strategically. There's a really great Clearer Thinking podcast episode on this with Tom Khalil. I linked it here in the on the slide. Really highly recommended to listen to that, or also check out the paper by Mintram. It's very accessible and breaks down the different skills quite well. So I already broke it down for you guys in a meme format, because of course that's how you make everything digestible. So you might think, or like a person who might not know how to navigate the policy environment might not know what message they actually try to convey to policymakers. They might not have much context on EU institutions. They might not be aware that their reports are actually just going into the void and not reaching anybody in particular. And then the policy entrepreneur, the idea, the concept behind that is that you really have a pragmatic approach to reaching the people that you want to influence and the opinion that you want to push forward. So you need to have a lot of context knowledge, a lot of in-depth expertise of where you actually want to go with this, and not just a high theoretical understanding. Because distribution of a policy paper is almost more important than, well, not more important. It's as important as writing the thing, right? Because otherwise it might as well have not existed. For that, there's the question of what's the difference compared to lobbyists. Well, yeah, you're lobbying for your cause, right? So most of civil society organizations, you can think about them as lobbyists for society, right? Lobbyists are the ones paid by big companies, and civil society organizations or think tanks can be considered, lobbying for their societal cause. Okay, so the question is then that you should ask yourself is, what do policymakers need? One answer that's wrong is they just need another report to read. This is not what they need, right? They usually don't need more lofty ideas. They need answers to their problems. So if you want to come up with a new cool thing that you want to convince them about, for example, how to enforce certain standards in AI, it needs to be connected to their problems. For example, how it can improve the EU's economy, or how can it improve the EU's geopolitical situation, not getting lost in between China and the US, for example. Or also in this particular instance, now that we have the codes of practice to enforce the UI Act, how can your idea make the enforcement of the AI Act easier for member states? So really try to put yourself into their shoes and ask yourself, how can you help them? And framing your topic in this way can support you in getting heard. All right, that brings us to the second part. So let's have a look at concrete career avenues. This will be relatively short, and then we'll jump into into an exercise. I made up a relatively, one potential or avenue to separate the different paths in EU AI governance. You can, of course, also come up with different categories, because some EU roles also operate on member state level, and the other way around. So it's not clear cut. But let's go with this distinction for now. So we have the EU, the wider ecosystem, and the member states. Let's jump into the EU level first. So we have government roles. So someone already mentioned in the comments the EU AI office, so that exists. We have different directorate generals, so the commission DGs, different departments in the commission. And we also have standardization bodies. So Senelec, that's the European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardization, is the official term. But there are also national standardization bodies. So there's one part of it, and then the second part is that there are also roles that are tied to a political mandate. So that might be in the parliament and the European Parliament. For example, members of the European Parliament have parliamentary assistants, so APAs, and also policy advisors. So these are all roles in the political mandate category. That brings us to the second part. So the wider ecosystem, those are the people that have influence without any political mandate, let's say. So two broader categories are actors who don't have a mandate or position within government, and the main areas that we have here are industry, academia, and think tanks. So let's go into some details. I'm just going to add all this already. So the whole group around think tanks, advocacy, civil society, they are trying to find a way that policymakers actually read their report, right? How do you ensure that the people who have very limited time, how do you ensure that they listen to you? You're not in power, so you need to be especially good at coalition building, knowing who the people are that you need to talk to, and other tacit knowledge. There's a good example that many people coordinated, many orgs coordinated in this space to contribute to the code of practice, for example. Then we have industry. So these are not only frontier AI companies, but also small and medium-sized enterprises and their interests organizations. And of course, any other company that has to implement the AI Act. The overall theory of change behind that is that you can influence companies from within, or this is the assumption, that you can influence companies from within to support reasonable regulation, and also to find ways to make regulation enforceable and possible to implement, right? To lower the barriers, because you can also pass regulation that is prohibitively expensive to enforce or prohibitively expensive to implement, and then it runs into issues. A good example here is the French support for Mistral, because that almost got the AI Act killed. So it was important to keep in mind, what do the French want to see in the AI Act that they are more likely to agree with the regulation. Because maybe there would have been a path to impact if someone from Mistral would have supported a version of the AI Act and would have said, hey, I am from this company and I do believe that this regulation is reasonable if you change, and this type of regulation won't kill our business, but will make it, it will be reasonable to implement this regulation. As a last point that I wanted to add is that for-profit entrepreneurship can also help bridge some issues around technical implementation of regulation. So just to throw out a few ideas is, building solutions for incident reporting, right? This is one example floating around in the space, but also technical documentation, assessing conformity, compliance platforms, but also creating incentives by, for example, some type of AI liability product. Cool. That brings us to another point around national governments. So this is now the third section that we're speaking about after the EU and then other actors, and now we're at national governments. So the big question is, why do they matter, right? You might think, well, you have the EU, so you might as well just go to Brussels and then decide everything from Brussels for the member states. But national governments do in fact matter a lot because they can override EU decisions. The AI Act almost collapsed, as I mentioned before, because France was pushing against it, but also Germany wanted to protect its national AI company. And this is one part, but then also with the current political climate, there are many people who expect more national pushback. Okay, so they argue that this will lead to overall national governments taking power away from Brussels. And yeah, it's worthwhile to ask then, does your country where your citizenship comes from, does it bring any unique advantage to the table? Because that can determine where you can have leverage. A good example here is the Netherlands with ASML, but also France with Mistral. And well, now I already showed the slide. Yeah, so basically being aware of the specific situation of each country if you would decide to work in national government. Now, this brings me to a little detour to support my point, which EU member, maybe some of you know it actually, which EU member state has the biggest economy? Maybe some people can write in the chat. Germany, France, Germany. Yes, exactly. So you know the point that I want to make. There we go. So yeah, Germany has the biggest economy in as an EU member state. And what does it mean? So these numbers now concretely, they are from 2019, but the overall message still holds. It's just really hard to make any decisions on the EU level without having at least the Germans on board. And most of the time, you also need the French and the Italians. And if you look at this map, it becomes very clear also where this is coming from. What's not shown here is that the concrete political situation can affect air governance. For example, Germany was holding early elections in February 2025 after the coalition collapsed, and that led to ministries not having a lot of bandwidth for new initiatives. So the argument that is shown here is a bit simplistic, the argument of work in France, Germany, Italy. But it's definitely a good starting point. So you should always have these three players in mind, because the typical winning coalition for making new decisions is still Germany, France, and then at least three of the smaller states. All right. Let's say you are interested to work in national government. But which ministries actually matter then in that case? So a surprise might be that you shouldn't only focus on digital ministries. So this might differ. So my opinion, I think, is shifting on this from day to day, given the different information that I'm getting from people working in the digital ministries. But I just want to say that they are not always the best place for frontier AI regulation, or at least they're not the only place where I would like people to look if they would like to work in this field, because they are very new, and their main task is oftentimes focusing on modernizing bureaucracy. So, digitizing driver's licenses, setting up new IT systems, and so on. So that's very different from frontier AI policy. Also, they usually have smaller budgets, they have fewer legal competencies usually, and a good point here, for example, would be that, for example, the German digital ministry is quite new. They appointed a political outsider somewhat. Well, he can be considered a political outsider because he didn't have any political positions beforehand, and overall, he's still the ministry is still setting up, so it doesn't have any strong coalitions yet with other actors in the space. And also the name already gives it away. So if you translate it from German, Bundesministerium für Digitales und Staatsmodernisierung, it's Ministry for Digital Affairs and State Modernization. So it's one big focus also on modernizing the state by using AI, for example, or other digital tools, not only on regulating. So the ministries that are also driving AI Act implementation in Germany are the Ministry of Economic Affairs. We have the Finance Ministry, Labor, but also Foreign Affairs. So my main point is that, of course, these ministries differ across member states. It can change depending on which election cycle you might be in, or any other dynamics. So this can be very complex for each member state. But I'm just saying, be aware that just because it says AI policy on the tin, it might not actually be what's in there, or it might mean very different things, right? Because in some sense, AI policy is also digitizing driver's licenses. Another point that I didn't add here on the slide, but that I would like to make, is that one argument you could make is also that it's easier to become the AI person, to reach some sort of expert status outside of the digital ministry, because you can, let's say, position yourself in the labor ministry as the person who understands AI-enabled job displacement. So rather than being one of many people with AI in their job title inside a digital ministry unit, you are the person in who in the labor ministry who understands what policies we might need to push for, or what policies we might need to implement to counteract an AI-enabled job displacement. Okay, these are very general takes again, so it might differ. A lot, and maybe in your country, the digital ministry is exactly the way to go because it got a lot of competencies, because it got a lot of power to move ahead and got significant budget. And also for Germany, what I just said, this might still change. So maybe the Bundesnetzagentur, the federal network agency, ends up being less powerful than expected, and then shifts more of the responsibility of the AI implementation in Germany to the German digital ministry. This might all happen, right? So it's always in flux. Yes. So just as an example, I encourage you to do your own research, right? So look into the details. This is organizational structure of the German digital ministry. You can find it on the internet, and you can figure out what different departments and sub-departments a ministry has, and you can figure out what those people actually work on, right? So do your own research, try to understand the details, try to talk to people. This brings us to another point that I flagged already earlier. It's if you work in national ministry and you have AI in your job title, it doesn't tell you automatically whether your job is in any way related to front AI regulation, right? Because many roles in government actually deal with digitization in some way, or modernizing bureaucracy, and not necessarily governing frontier AI. So yeah, is the role about using AI, or is it about governing it? Okay, this brings us to the third part, which is the worksheet.
The workshop part of this talk is not included in the video. Pause here and think about how you could test if AI governance is the right career for you. For example, you could contact someone in the field and set up a short call or a meeting. Pick one test to try and add it to your calendar.
The three just wrap-up points would be that a lot of research never ends up influencing policy. So be aware of that. Try to minimize the risk of your research getting lost. Or try to make research that can't get lost in the first place because it ties into relevant points, relevant needs from the very beginning. Then the second point is consider national governments to work on AI governance. And find small ways to test your fit. So that all relates to the worksheet that you have looked at. And if you're curious, there's the Talos Fellowship. The deadline is April 26th, and there have already been some questions on the fellowship. So I'm happy to go into that as part of the Q&A. So we have Alex asking, as a tech industry transplant, where do I start? Well, if you can unmute yourself, I'd be curious to hear more context from you. Otherwise, I will share more generally.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I deliberately worded my question in a very generic way, just thinking maybe it could also be relevant to other people from the tech industry who
Yeah.
would like to, to to make an impact, to make a positive impact on the world. But in short, I do have domain knowledge. I've almost never had any exposure to the policy making side, so I'm gonna assume, like you mentioned, that there's a lot of knowledge gaps among the policymakers. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's demand for that kind of domain knowledge, and maybe there are some obvious ways to close those.
The main thing to be aware of is that even though policymakers have a lot of technical knowledge gaps, you need to convince them that they actually need to close it, right? Also, you need to convince, so they won't invite you to, let's say, give a talk in the ministry just because they know that they need to close this. There's so many different different important topics in the political day to day that this is the first step to understand. Well, this brings me to the point for many people from the tech industry. I think it really helps to gain some policy exposure first, to understand what does it mean to translate technical terms and overall technology into policy processes. So to highlight the point that I made during the talk, to really understand what's needed, what are the current conversations that people in ministries have, for example, and how can the concerns that I want to bring to the table, how do they connect with it? So to reference the worksheet, you might want to decide to join a political party or an advocacy group to understand, to gain a bit more exposure to campaigning, to lobbying, to what does it even mean to draft a legislative text. Because usually volunteering opportunities are ample, and you're able to people are happy if they're supported, and it really helps you to get that policy mindset. And then you also know, is this a role that you would like to take on? Is the translation from technical to policy, is this something that suits you?
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. The second question is, Talos seems super competitive. Any extra advice on how to get in? So yeah, I agree that Talos has become more competitive over the years. So we started 3 years ago, and since then the caliber of the cohort has increased, and we have reached up to mid. It's not only junior anymore. So most people have a master's degree, for example, at least, and some of them have also some years of work experience. So I would give the advice to first aim for basically all of the things that were mentioned in the worksheets, or aim for some of the things that actually suit you. So getting some exposure to the political system in your country, for example. So for example, we are always excited to see someone apply who has some context on their national government, who has worked in the ministry, and who has shown initiative. In what way did they use their role, even if it was a junior role? In what way did they push for certain initiatives that people hadn't thought before about? The more junior option would be the Blue Book traineeship for the Commission, the Schumann traineeship. I think someone else also mentioned whether I would recommend the council fellowship. Yes, so all of those expose you to the policy environment and helps you make sense of how it actually works. So yeah, the advice would be get out there, get some real world experience. And also, it might be helpful to actually check out our website. We have our alumni listed on our website, and there you can see all the profiles. So we have a very diverse set of profiles. This actually brings me perfectly into the third question. So who gets actually selected for the fellowship? We have some students, but also we have people who have already some work experience in the field. The main criterion that we're looking for is that the person has like some basic AI governance understanding, and it has a risk focus, so it's scope sensitive, so is aware of why they want to work on AI policy, right? Like having like an awareness of what are the problems they would like to solve, what are the risks that they would like to reduce. And also some epistemic clarity around that, right? Like, what are the questions that they need more answers on? What are the questions where they're uncertain? What are the topics where they have strong opinions on? And also, what would make them change their mind? Okay, so the epistemic clarity that was also highlighted as a policy entrepreneur is really important to us. Because AI governance is an ever-changing field, and you really need to update constantly. Like, okay, a couple months ago, this wasn't a good, or this initiative didn't seem like a good path to pursue, but now new information might show that it is a good path to pursue, or evidence might support this, right? But things are moving quickly, models are released constantly, so you really need to have some epistemic hygiene here and be aware of how your opinions shift alongside those developments. And if you want to know more who gets selected for the fellowship, please check out our website. We have alumni profiles. We have all the names of the alumni linked there. And the most recent cohort, I think, is not there yet, the spring cohort, but we have added their names on our LinkedIn website. So I think we have posted it. We've made a LinkedIn post with all their profiles, so you can see who actually got in. For navigating career paths, how would you distinguish the AI governance and AI safety fields? What are the fundamental differences between the two from your perspective? Well, the AI safety field, I'm now going to distinguish between technical AI safety and AI governance, because I assume that this is the distinction that you want to draw. Well, the technical AI safety field is requiring lots of very different skills, right? Like, it's mostly desk-based research that's done. And then the AI governance field, in some way, I think it locks into the AI safety field quite well by really bringing the people together who are able to then also distribute that, right? To distribute the technical solutions that might be found to AI safety problems. But also, AI governance also covers areas because there are also people who do AI governance research, right? Who are also just in academia doing desk research. And they think not necessarily about technical solutions, but they think more broadly about what does it mean from a political perspective? What does it mean from maybe an international perspective? What kind of treaties might be possible? What are the broader societal effects? How can we reduce, let's say, the impacts of AI-enabled job displacement? What are the ways forward? How can we use the political momentum of AI-enabled job displacement to then push for certain AI regulations? So those type of strategic thinking, that's in the AI governance field. And the technical AI safety folks, they're usually going a lot into detail about, like, oh, this model has a high risk of showing sandbagging. How do we circumvent the issue of sandbagging and ensuring that this doesn't happen, or that it doesn't scheme anymore or something? In the worksheet, you mentioned applying to lots of jobs. There aren't lots of AI policy related jobs on LinkedIn, at least not in the EU. Any other place to look for them? That's a very good question. So what I would like to encourage you is to not only to like broaden your lens, to broaden your perspective, and to not only go for the job that has AI policy written on its tin, right? So, for example, you might want to consider if you have a strong econ background or strong, let's say you have a strong economics background, and you might want to go to the Ministry of Finance because it has some subunit. You find on the internet the organizational structure, and you find that in the Ministry of Finance in your country, there's a subunit on digital affairs or infrastructure, digital infrastructure for your country or whatever. You end up talking to people and you find out, oh, this unit is actually also tasked with, in collaboration with another ministry, is tasked with figuring out a data center strategy for your country, right? And then it's like, oh, this could be an interesting place to work in. So the job might then just be you're an economist at the Ministry for Economic Affairs, but your work might be very much related to AI policy topics. So don't just type into your LinkedIn search bar AI policy job, but also just try to broaden your scope and be creative here, because again, also the things that say AI policy might not actually be the AI policy you care about, because there might be very narrow models, very narrow, not any risk focus, and so on. We have another FitX question. So again, I'm going back to this thing of Talos is not only, the Talos Fellowship is not only for relatively young people. It's we're also very happy to receive CVs from experienced tech industry executives with strong AI experience, because those are usually the ones that also benefit from our program a lot, because from us you get the policy experience. So please do apply if you have that type of profile. Yeah. Then we have I don't have a list of all of the MEPs working on AI or tech policy, but there's one person that just comes to mind. So we have Kai Zenner, who's the APA, the parliamentary assistant to Axel Voss. No, actually, okay. Kai Zenner is now not the APA anymore, but he's the digital policy advisor to Axel Voss now. So he sits in the European Parliament and supports Axel Voss with digital policy and also worked on the AI Act. So this is just one of the many people that I could list here. Yeah, there was one question on the Policy Leaders Program. So the Policy Leaders Program is something that we've set up for particularly experienced professionals. So those are with at least 10 years of professional experience. And we ran a pilot program for the Policy Leaders Program this year for the first time. So we're still evaluating whether we're going to offer that again. But yeah, sign up to our newsletter if you would like to be informed about that. But again, this is for the very senior side of things, so 10 plus years. And everyone else, please do feel encouraged to apply to Talos, including non-EU citizens. So we also have, for example, a lot of UK nationals in our programs usually. The only people that are kind of out of scope for us is people who don't have any ties to the EU or to Europe. Okay, so since our program is focused on European AI policy processes, the knowledge that you gain from our program probably is not as helpful for you if you're in the US and you're planning to stay in the US and you're not planning on, let's say, collaborating with the EU at all. So yeah, some Europe connection is required. Any other question, Carolina, that you would think I should pick out? I'm happy for your guidance.
I think there were a few on advice about like finding a mentor.
Yeah, finding a mentor is actually a tricky one because usually there's like this uncanny valley where you need a mentor to figure out what type of person might be a good mentor, right? So it's kind of a tricky situation sometimes. So a friend of mine has found a really strong mentor by just messaging his favorite AI policy person on Twitter, on X, and just being like, "Hey, I really like your takes. This is me. This is my X account. Can we have a chat?" Right. So some people just do a lot of cold outreach to people that where they're deeply familiar with that work. So there are lots and lots of Substack blogs that offer deep expertise, deep insights into different areas of policymaking. And maybe you stumble upon a writer that where you think, okay, this is a really interesting take. I enjoy reading this person every week. So yeah, this is a lot of general ones. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of newsletters that I would recommend. But one person that comes to mind that I read regularly is Anton Leicht. He's now focusing more on the US policy, but he has previously also worked on German and European AI policy. And I find his takes usually quite interesting to spark my own thoughts and make up my mind.
Is a one-on-one better strategy than, for example, writing a post? And then somebody said that they are afraid that because they are quite new, people would not want to have one-on-ones with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you can always go down the seniority ladder, right? Usually, and you can always try to make the one-on-one more likely by having a concrete ask, right? So one strategy that I know is that you can just have your own project. For example, you can just say, my personal project is to map the national AI strategy of my country. And then you just reach out to people and you're like, hey, my project is to map the national AI strategies of this country. Could you have, like, I would like to talk to you about XYZ, compute infrastructure, I don't know, energy strategy and another topic. I would like to talk to you for 20 minutes about this. Do you have time? So really make your ask very concrete and showcase that you have enough knowledge to ask the right questions, right? So that would be my main take, because people appreciate being asked. They might not always have the time to respond to you or to always have a call with you, but they might refer you if they have the feeling that you come in with context and you're aware of you can appreciate that person's time by preparing well. Yeah. Does research or academic experience matter most for jobs, or is work experience always more relevant? So it really depends on what the ultimate job is about. So maybe this person means the fellowship. I'm not entirely sure. So it really depends on the profile you're aiming for, right? So it's also very useful for you to then reflect on to suggest you fit for certain fields. So how I like to think about different skills, different jobs in the field is usually on the spectrum. So going from the very stakeholder, for the very like desk research focused academic research to the very opposite end of the spectrum, which would be only stakeholder engagement. So going to the people, distributing the research, understanding what they have to say, connecting with the right people to bring across your point in the best possible way. And then there's all of the things in between, right? There might be some role around 50-50 where you're like engaging with stakeholders, engaging with MEPs, with commissioners, and networking a lot to understand what's currently possible, what's in the political overtone window. But then also doing a lot of in-depth research with the remaining 50% of your time. So those different those different jobs require very different skills, right? So you might not be, if you're not a very not a strong people's person, you might, but you're still interested in stakeholder engagement. Well, you could consider getting better at that and seeing if you enjoy it, if you're good at it. But if you're mostly academic leaning, then that just outlines a very different path for you. So it's always good to keep in mind what you're working with.
When people advertise sort of senior AI governance positions, like how senior does it actually mean? Because it's still quite, new field.
So that can, of course, differ. So it's usually senior is usually not that senior in AI governance if it's actually an AI governance job. So I would say it really depends on the organization, right? So I wouldn't say that there's a fixed number of years that you need to have in order to apply for those types of jobs. But at the same time, the whole field of AI governance skews younger, because the whole AI safety, AI governance bubble is just overall younger. So therefore, the average to reach a senior title is just less. Yeah, but still, it can mean a lot of things. So I can't make a general statement here now. How many years are required? Yeah, exactly. Carolina replied to that. So we are only taking people older than 18, and at least so the average cohort member, the average cohort participant has at least a bachelor's degree.
If somebody is still a teenager and already interested in this topic, do you have any idea of how they could be developing in this area?
I would probably recommend to do something related to policy. Like, for example, you could consider joining a party and just learning how that works. So this is also outlined in the document that I shared. I think it could help a lot to just broaden, or like to strengthen your skill set more generally, so that at the later point, once you've graduated from university, that you can jump right in and deliver. So this might be getting really good at public speaking, or also, I think the most important point is actually making connections. So maybe in your country, you understand which party, maybe you volunteer for a party and end up influencing the digital policy. And in that process, it's not necessarily about getting to influence directly or trying to bring your expertise to the table directly, but rather it's about building that network, right? And understanding how does the political ecosystem even work. I think there's currently not enough technical talent in most policy circles, and that includes politics. Just want to just mention to anyone still having questions, please do check out our website. Also check out our LinkedIn presence, where we share what our fellows are working on. So if you're still uncertain, what does it even mean? Which blogs should I follow? So we have a bunch of our fellows also writing about AI policy issues. So that's all on our website and on LinkedIn. And if you still have questions that are not answered on either platform, then you're welcome to reach out. So I'm going to pop in my email into the chat. And the more context, if you have any requests, the more context you give me about yourself, the easier it is for me to respond to you. And also, please ensure to check out the website first and not letting me answer questions that could have been a look up at the website. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Huge thanks to Carolina and Carolin for letting me jump in here. So I'm Tristan Rao, and I run the AI Governance Club over at Blue Dot Impact, along with Mariana, who Carolina mentioned is also here. Basically, we get together every week to break down a new paper or policy idea. We cover everything through an AI governance lens, like superintelligence, to things like AI-induced psychosis. We even just did a deep dive on the Trump America AI Act. So the main reason I would recommend joining, especially if you're looking to pivot into the field, right, is that it's a really low stakes way to build some credibility. Once you've hung out with us for a few sessions, we actually encourage you to lead a discussion or present your own work. So if you're publishing research or working on something that impacts AI governance, this is a great way to get your name out there, especially to get some feedback, which is very important, and show people your work. So we meet every Thursday at 5 p.m. UTC. You do not need to be a policy or legal expert to join. Just show up if that week's theme looks interesting to you. So like this week, we'll be having a discussion on low resource language jailbreaks and looking at it from an AI governance lens. So if that's interesting to you, please join. If it's not interesting to you, it's not relevant to your area, just subscribe to the calendar and look for something that's more relevant to you. So thank you again, Carolina, and I'll post some links in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think from both comments, the reactions, and also my experience, this has been an extremely valuable talk, workshops, and Q&A. And it's really great of you to stay, longer than an hour. And also thank you so much for everybody who joined. Your engagement and participation is very much appreciated.